And version 3 was really all about function calling. And so kind of throughout this progression, functions came along. And so I think June last year, OpenAI released, their model, the 3.5 Turbo model was going to support functions. And so I genuinely think this really is a new way of us interacting with our infrastructure. You imagine being able to talk to an upstream system that's got live data, not just KB documents or PDFs that are sitting on our file servers. Talk to a Veeam backup and replication server, for example, via natural language. Obviously, they've got APIs that's presenting real-time data at the back end, or maybe we want to bridge a backup and replication server with a ServiceNow, and start logging tickets because a backup job's failed. We could genuinely change the way that we interact with systems using large language models themselves. And so functions, kind of as defined here, are really code that the LLM can request to be run within our application. So we have to still write the integration. The large language model can't trigger the API for us. We still need to trigger the API and get the response back, maybe manipulate it a bit, reduce the data to make it a bit more efficient. And our application will fundamentally run that. But when we ask the query of the LLM, it'll say, hey, you've said that these tools are available. I would like to trigger that one, please. And maybe there's some input parameters as well. And so that's what we're doing here. And you can't just, you're not really limited to just reading data out and go and give me a report of the backup jobs that have run. You can actually get it to trigger jobs too. So we'll have a bit of a play with that in a second. And so, yeah, really there's endless possibilities. You can integrate any block of code. It doesn't need to be just talking to APIs. You could have just a simple little function within your code that doesn't reach out to any external system and just performs a calculation. But yeah, I think the true power is in being able to bridge these LLMs with various different system APIs and have us talk and just make our jobs a bit more efficient, give us different response, get it to gain insights into the data that's there that maybe we can't see too. So let's have a look at VannyGPT 3-ish, and this is kind of what he looks like. And so I can say, here's some pre-canned questions I've got in here, so I don't have to type them out. Like, what backup jobs do I have? List them and provide a total count. If I click go here, you'll see it spinning, and you'll see, okay, cool. Here's some backup jobs. This one's disabled. The K3's job's enabled, and that's all good. And so if we look at some of our code, so this is our chat with BNR bot that we were just looking at. And so down the bottom here, we've got these tools. So when we when we're talking with the large language model, along with our query, we'll also say, here's some tools that you can use if you need to. It doesn't need to use them because we might just ask a question and it might be able to just give us the answer back, just like you're chatting with ChatGPT today. But if it thinks based on your query that it could leverage one of the tools that you've given it, such as get backup jobs in our case, where we just said, what are the list of the backup jobs, then it will. And I've also given it a backup job state, start backup jobs. So this is where we're starting to write in. You'll notice that this takes an argument of ID. And so you can see these get quite complex, but I've just said it needs an ID. And so it will leverage these tools and it might look for an ID parameter and get backup jobs, and then it will work out that it needs to insert that into here, and our code will take care of that and trigger things. So if we go back up and look at, say, this one here, this is where we get our jobs. So this just looks, pretty basic. We just go and fetch our jobs endpoint, which is just a local backup server that I'm running here. With obviously our authentication token. And then when we get it back, we're actually getting a whole bunch of data back, but all I'm doing is pushing the ID, the name, and the status. You could expand that for any other information that you might want that's in that payload that's coming back from the Veeam server, and inject it into your job list, and then the LLM would then have access to that information. But this is an example of where we've maybe got a bigger payload coming back and we're reducing it down in size to just keep it kind of under control in terms of the amount of data that's being passed back and forth from the LLM itself. And if we look at the backup server, you can see here's a bunch of jobs. We've got nothing running. And so if we go back to our thing here, let's see if we can get it to play ball. It's not always accurate, but I could say, is there a K3S job in our backup server? Oh, great. So it's detected that there's one K3s, and then we could say, what is the ID of this job? Cool. So it's returned an ID. And then what we can say here is like, can you start the job? And what it's working at here is you can see that just by naming it, it's worked out the job out of that list of jobs, because there's no like query by name API. So it's returned all those jobs back, and it's worked out that the one that's named similar is the one that we want to use. It also, you notice I haven't said what's the ID of the K3's job. It's already looked at the context that we've previously talked about here, and then it's able to infer the ID from that. And then I've said, can you start the job? Again, I haven't said, can you start the K3's job? But you'll notice that one K3's backup has been started successfully. And then I could say, like, are there any job sessions running? Yes, there's one job. It's working. It's our one K3's job. That's good. This demo is working brilliantly. Creation time, and just to show there's no smoke and mirrors, you can see that the one K3's job is now started. And so obviously a pretty basic example and not fully fleshed out in terms of all the other API endpoints, but I think you can kind of start to appreciate the power of this, of being able to bridge multiple systems together through the power of natural language. And yeah, I would love to kind of iterate on this more, and I intend to this year,